It was supposed to be 2 days. Just two? That's what my daughter said on the phone, her voice rushed and too sweet, like she was trying to sell me something I didn't want to buy. Just the weekend, Mum. Friday night through Sunday morning. You know how much the kids love you. I do know, and truth be told, I loved them more than I thought my tired old heart could. Lucy, 5 years old and full of fire, always asking why, always touching everything, and Mikey, quiet and 7, with big eyes and a sensitive soul. He was the kind of boy who noticed when I wore new earrings or when the cookies smelled different. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to help, but because I knew my daughter. Melissa was impulsive. Since marrying Trent, she'd been harder to reach. Not in the literal sense, her phone always worked, but emotionally, she was a fortress. She'd call, and it would always be for something, money, a favor, a lifeline. Still, I said yes. They dropped the kids off late Friday afternoon. Melissa looked tired, but her makeup was perfect. Trent didn't get out of the car. He just waved from the driver's seat, like this was a drop-off at daycare. Melissa hugged the kids quickly and kissed the top of my head. "We'll be back by noon Sunday," she said. "Promise." Then they were gone. We had pancakes that night. I let Lucy stir the batter and watched her spill half of it on the counter. Mikey asked to sleep in the guest room instead of the pull-out. I tucked them both in, read Good Night Moon, and sat in the hallway listening to them whisper in the dark. I didn't know it then, but that was the last night I would ever believe in the promise of just the weekend. By Sunday morning, they still hadn't returned. No text, no call. I wasn't panicked yet. Things happen. Cars break down. Phones die. I made the kids breakfast and told them Mommy and Daddy would be here soon. By Sunday night, I called. No answer. Monday morning, still nothing. And that's when the dread crept in. Not like a lightning bolt. No, it came like a slow, heavy fog. One that settled over my bones and whispered, "They're not coming back." By Monday afternoon, I was pacing. My phone sat on the kitchen counter, silent as a stone. I called again. Melissa's number rang twice, then went to voicemail. Trent's went straight to, "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." I didn't tell the kids, not yet. I made grilled cheese for lunch. Lucy played with her stuffed dog on the living room rug, and Mikey sat at the table colouring quietly. He was too quiet. I could tell he was listening, to the lack of car doors, to the stillness in my voice, to the subtle way I kept glancing at the clock. "Grandma," he said without looking up, "when are Mum and Dad coming back?" I smiled, fake, but soft. "Soon, sweetheart. Maybe they got caught in traffic." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. I don't think I believed myself either. By Tuesday, I started making real calls. I contacted Melissa's work. She hadn't shown up. I called the school where Mikey was supposed to return that day. No notification of absence. I called hospitals. Nothing. No one had seen or heard from either of them. I even drove by their apartment. It was empty. Not just quiet, vacant. The curtains were gone. The mailbox was stuffed with coupons and unread bills. The neighbours said they moved out the week before. "Didn't you know?" one woman asked, frowning at me. "They said they were going out of state, something about a new job." I stood there, stunned. No forwarding address, no goodbye, no plan. They hadn't gone for the weekend. They'd left, disappeared. And they left their kids with me. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Mikey and Lucy, sleeping side by side. They looked so small, so trusting. What do you do when your own child disappears? What do you do when your daughter, a woman you held as a baby, nursed through fevers, walked down the aisle, vanishes without a word, and leaves behind two small souls who ask you every hour when she'll come back? You lie. You say, any day now. And then you pray to a God you're not even sure hears you anymore. That was the night I stopped hoping for a return and started preparing to raise them myself. Wednesday morning came with a broken shoelace and a loose tooth. Lucy tugged on my nightgown at 6:30, already dressed in mismatched socks and asking if I had any glitter for her backpack. Mikey followed behind her like a shadow, holding a toothbrush in one hand and a question in his eyes. "Grandma, should we be getting ready for school?" I froze. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Up until that point, I was still stuck in limbo, one foot in denial, the other in dread. But his question pulled me forward like a rope yanked from the dark. These kids weren't waiting anymore. They were living, and they needed structure, predictability, a world that didn't spin off its axis just because their parents decided to vanish. I made a decision that day. I drove to their old school, sat down with the principal, and told her the truth, or at least the version of it I could manage. I said Melissa was away for a while, that I had temporary custody, and that yes, I would handle all school communications going forward. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Paperwork was signed, emergency contacts were updated. By Thursday, Mikey was back in school and Lucy was enrolled in the pre-K across town. The days moved in slow, clunky beats. I packed lunches, did laundry, cleaned up crayon-streaked walls, and answered the same question over and over again. "When's Mommy coming back?" I said. "Soon, less and less." Instead, I'd offer a hug, a snack, a distraction. That weekend, I found Lucy in the closet, holding a pair of sparkly pink shoes Melissa had given her for her birthday. She looked up at me and said, "She forgot me, didn't she?" I knelt down, looked her in the eyes and said, "No, baby, but sometimes grown-ups get very lost and they forget how to come back." She didn't cry. She just nodded and put the shoes back in the box. I stood in the bathroom that night, brushing my teeth with the kids' toothbrushes lined up next to mine, and realized that without even meaning to, we'd become a family. Not a patched-up version of the one they lost, a real one, the kind built out of routines and warm pancakes and whispered bedtime stories, the kind that shows up. 2 weeks had passed since Melissa vanished. We were finding our rhythm, chaotic, messy, beautiful. Lucy started calling my guest room her castle. Mikey began setting the table without being asked. I started keeping a grocery list with juice boxes and fish-shaped crackers, things I hadn't bought in years. Then the letter came. It wasn't handwritten or sentimental. It was a manila envelope, cold and official looking, slid through my front door on a Friday afternoon. No return address, just my name, typed in blocky black font. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, no greeting, no goodbye. "Mom, don't try to find us, we're okay. The kids are better off with you. We can't do this right now. Please don't involve the police. They'll be better this way. Love, M. There was no mention of where they were, no promise of return, just an erasure. I sat at the table, holding that paper like it was made of glass. My hands trembled. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to laugh. They had decided, without discussion, without explanation, that I would raise their children, that I would fix what they had broken. And they weren't wrong. I would raise them. Not because I had to, but because there was no one else. Because I couldn't bear the idea of Lucy sleeping in a foster home, or Mikey's gentle heart crushed under courtrooms and confusion. But that letter changed things. I called a lawyer the next morning. I didn't want revenge. I wanted protection for them, legal guardianship, the ability to sign school forms, authorize doctor visits, make real decisions. I needed to make this official, even if it felt like betrayal. The process was long and exhausting. I had to submit documentation, meet with social workers, answer uncomfortable questions. "Do you believe your daughter is ever coming back?" they asked. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe that somewhere out there she missed them, but lies have no place in legal proceedings. So I said, "No, I don't." That was the hardest sentence I've ever spoken. That night I sat with Mikey in the living room as he read out loud from a library book. Lucy fell asleep on my lap holding her stuffed dog, and I knew I couldn't give them the parents they lost, but I could give them everything else. I'm 68. My back aches when I bend for too long, and my knees pop when I climb stairs. I've already buried a husband and 2 sisters. I thought the season of raising children had long passed for me, like spring turn into fall, never to come again. And yet, here I was, standing in the cereal aisle at the local market, trying to remember if Mikey liked the honey oats or the chocolate kind. Lucy had drawn a picture of a unicorn on my shopping list. It covered half the paper. I wasn't supposed to be a mother again. But motherhood isn't about biology or age. It's about showing up. And every morning I showed up. At 6:45 a.m., I was making toast and tying shoelaces. At 8:10, I was waving from the porch as the school bus pulled away. I cleaned up toys. I listened to knock-knock jokes. I checked homework and kissed boo-boos. Every hour of my day was soaked in a kind of exhaustion that only love can bring. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy. Lucy had night terrors the second week. She woke up screaming that the house was on fire. It wasn't. But something inside her burned. I held her close and let her cry. Mikey started biting his fingernails until they bled. He said it helped make the inside noise go away. I sat with him one evening and showed him how to breathe deep, counting to 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4. I didn't know if it would help, but I needed him to feel something he could control. I didn't have all the answers. Some days I hid in the laundry room for 10 minutes just to breathe. Some nights I cried into a dish towel while the kids watched cartoons in the next room. But through it all, I kept going because they needed me. And because somewhere deep down, I think I needed them too. They gave me purpose, laughter, a reason to get up when everything else felt heavy. They didn't ask for perfection, just presence. One evening, Mikey placed a drawing on my lap. It was a stick figure version of me holding hands with him and Lucy. Above our heads, he'd written in shaky block letters, "My real family." I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't believe it, but because somehow, without anyone saying it, it had already become true. It was a Tuesday morning when she knocked on the door. A woman in a grey blazer with soft eyes and a folder tucked under her arm. She introduced herself as Ms. Delaney, Child Welfare Services. "Just a standard check-in," she said gently, "part of the guardianship process." I nodded, even though my palms were already sweating. I'd cleaned the house twice that morning. The cookies were still warm on the counter, and Lucy's hair was actually brushed for once. I wanted everything to look perfect, even though perfect isn't what makes a home. Presence is. She sat on the couch and asked questions. Do the children sleep well? What's their bedtime routine? Any history of discipline issues? I answered everything as best I could. She jotted notes, occasionally raising an eyebrow or nodding along. Then she asked if she could speak to the children. Lucy came bounding in with a glittery drawing she wanted to show her. Mikey was slower, cautious, like a cat deciding whether to trust a stranger. But he eventually sat beside her, his hands folded tightly in his lap. I watched from the kitchen, pretending to be busy while straining to hear every word. Do you feel safe here? She asked gently. Mikey nodded. Does Grandma ever yell or make you feel scared? He shook his head. Then, after a pause, he said, She makes pancakes in the shape of dinosaurs, even the tails. I smiled into my tea. When Miss Delaney stood to leave, she gave me a small smile. They seem happy, she said. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. She paused at the door. Have you heard from Melissa at all? I shook my head. Not since the letter. She frowned slightly. We'll continue to monitor the situation, but if you're willing and they're safe here, we'll proceed with granting you temporary custody. Whatever they need, I said, I'll do it. After she left, Mikey came over and hugged my waist. Was she going to take us away? I looked down into his worried eyes. No, sweetheart, no one's taking you anywhere. Promise? I bent to his level. Promise, you're mine now. That night, Lucy fell asleep on the couch holding one of my old scarves, and Mikey asked to say grace at dinner. His prayer was simple. Thank you for pancakes, and for Grandma, and for not leaving. I never thought I'd be back in a school parking lot, sitting behind the wheel with lukewarm coffee and a sticky dashboard, watching children spill out of yellow buses like tiny whirlwinds. But here I was, twice a day, every weekday, part of a world I thought I'd left behind decades ago. Mikey had a field trip coming up, and I spent nearly an hour trying to understand the permission slip. So many digital codes and QR things. I ended up calling the teacher just to ask if it was okay to sign it with a pen. Lucy needed a costume for Superhero Friday. She wanted to be Dr. Pancake, a superhero who makes breakfast to save the world. I spent 2 nights sewing a cape out of an old pillowcase and hot gluing foam bacon to her belt. My joints protested daily. My hips ached in the mornings, but I also laughed more than I had in years. One evening, I sat on the porch watching them chase fireflies, Lucy giggling, Mikey trying to catch one in a mason jar. I was sipping peppermint tea and listening to the cicadas when a neighbour stopped by. Mrs. Carver, mid-60s, always in pearls, always ready to gossip. You're doing the Lord's work, she said, leaning on the fence. It's a miracle you're holding up. I smiled politely, but inside, the words sat wrong. This wasn't charity. This wasn't sacrifice. This was family. Later that night, after bath time and books, Mikey came into my room. He lingered in the doorway, hesitant. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. If Mommy comes back, do we have to go with her? His question felt like a hand on my throat. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't feel safe, I said softly. He nodded. Okay, just wondering. I didn't press. Kids ask the biggest questions in the smallest voices. He needed to know the door was there, that he could walk through it when he was ready. After he left, I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling. I missed my daughter. Even after all this, I missed the girl she used to be, the one who held my hand during thunderstorms and cried when her goldfish died. But she had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. Raising these children wasn't a return to motherhood, it was a redemption of it. It was a regular Thursday. Mikey had brought home a spelling test with a gold star. Lucy had insisted on wearing her pajamas to school, and I'd spilled orange juice on my clean blouse. The kids were with a neighbour for an hour while I ran errands. I didn't expect anything unusual, just groceries, milk, cereal, peanut butter, the usual. I turned the corner into the cereal aisle and nearly dropped my basket. Melissa. She stood there, alone, scanning the shelves with a blank stare. Her hair was longer, her frame thinner. She wore a faded hoodie and jeans that looked one size too big. She hadn't seen me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I thought I might be hallucinating. But no, it was her, my daughter, the woman who left 2 children and a letter and vanished into the wind. And here she was, comparing prices on granola. I didn't think, I just stepped forward. Melissa. She flinched, turned, and her eyes widened. Mum? We stood there for a moment, surrounded by sugary boxes and fluorescent light, years of silence packed between us like cardboard. Where have you been? I asked. My voice came out hoarse, too soft. She looked down. We left. Things were bad with Trent, really bad. You left them? My voice cracked. You left me. You didn't say goodbye. You let them think you'd be back. She swallowed hard. I didn't know what else to do. You could have called. I was scared. Of what? Your children or yourself? She looked away. I didn't think I could be their mom anymore. They never stop being your kids, Melissa, not even once. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked them away. Are they okay? They're safe, they're loved, they're thriving. I'm glad, she whispered. I studied her. She looked hollow, like a balloon half deflated, not cruel, just lost. The same girl I once raised, now standing in front of me as a ghost. I have guardianship now, I said. I had to. She nodded slowly. I understand. We stood in silence, 2 mothers, neither whole. If you ever want to see them, I added, you'll need to earn it, slowly, carefully. She nodded again. I don't expect anything, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Not then. Some words take time to mean anything. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, watching Mikey colour and Lucy eat applesauce with her fingers. They were okay. And for now, that was enough. That night after seeing Melissa, I sat on the edge of my bed holding a blank note card. I'd taken it from a dusty box in the closet labelled Stationery, 1989. It still smelled faintly of glue and old roses. I stared at the card for a long time, pen in hand. Should I write her? Should I tell her more about the kids, about Lucy's obsession with pancakes or Mikey's quiet strength? Should I tell her that the garden is blooming again, or that her son prays out loud every night? In the end, I didn't write a word. Some letters are meant to stay unwritten, but something had shifted in me. Seeing her reminded me that people don't vanish, they erode. A little more each time the world tells them they've failed. And I couldn't help wondering how long it had been since anyone told Melissa she was still worth loving, even if she had broken so many hearts. The next morning, Mikey found a photo album in the closet. "Who's this?" he asked, pointing at a picture of Melissa as a teenager. She had braces and wore a t-shirt with a cartoon unicorn on it. "That's your mum," I said. "She looks different." "She was younger," Happier, I think. Do you miss her? Every day, but I said, sometimes. He studied the photo for a moment, then gently closed the album and slid it back into the box. Lucy, sitting on the floor nearby, asked out of nowhere, "Is Mommy a bad person?" I looked at her. "Why do you ask that?" "Because she left." I knelt beside her and took her hand. Leaving doesn't always mean someone is bad. Sometimes people are hurting so badly they forget how to stay. She seemed to think about that, then nodded solemnly and asked if she could have applesauce for breakfast again. That day I wrote a different letter, not to Melissa, but to the court. I asked if there was a way to arrange supervised visits in the future. No guarantees, no promises, just a door left slightly open. I didn't do it for Melissa. I did it for Mikey and Lucy, so one day they could ask their mother the questions I couldn't answer. And maybe, if she was brave enough, she could try to answer them herself. 2 weeks after I mailed the letter to the court, I got a call. It was a social worker, someone new, someone kind. "We received your petition regarding supervised contact," she said. "Melissa responded. She's willing, but she's requested more time." More time. I thanked her and hung up, staring at the phone like it might apologize for delivering a truth I already knew. Melissa wasn't ready. I didn't tell the kids right away. I didn't want to get their hopes up or tangle their hearts in more confusion. But Mikey must have felt something in the air, because he came to me after dinner that night, his eyes wide and vulnerable. "Is Mommy coming soon?" I knelt down beside him. "Not yet, sweetheart." He bit his lip. "Do you think she wants to?" That was the moment that gutted me, not because of what I had to say, but because of how gently he asked, not with anger, not with tears, just a quiet longing that no child should ever have to carry. "I think she wants to," I said. "I think she just doesn't know how." He nodded slowly. "Okay." Just okay, like he'd accepted the ache and filed it into a corner of his chest. That weekend, I took the kids to the library. Mikey checked out a book on space and read aloud about galaxies and black holes. Lucy ran her fingers along the spines of every pink book she could find and proudly borrowed one about a dancing duck. On the way home, we stopped for ice cream. "Can I get sprinkles?" Lucy asked. "2 scoops," Mikey chimed in. I said yes to both, because sometimes love looks like sprinkles on a Saturday. Sometimes healing happens between scoops of vanilla and spoonfuls of strawberry. That night, while they slept, I sat on the couch and pulled out a journal I hadn't touched in years. I wrote about that first weekend they were left with me, about the cereal aisle, about Mikey's prayers and Lucy's unicorn capes. I wrote everything down because one day they would need the full story, and I wanted it told with softness, with grace, with truth. And then I added one more entry. "She didn't show up today, but we did. We always do." The next few weeks passed in a kind of gentle rhythm. Mikey started writing his own stories, short ones, mostly about space dragons and invisible dogs. Lucy, on the other hand, had taken to leaving sticky notes around the house. "I love you, Grandma," taped to the fridge. "You are the best," folded into my pillowcase. We were building something real, stronger than paper, louder than absence. One Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from the school. "Mikey had a rough day," the teacher said. "He froze during reading time, then cried in the hallway." I picked him up early. He didn't speak much on the way home, just stared out the window. Back at the house, I made us hot cocoa, sat beside him on the porch. We watched the wind tug at the trees. Finally, he whispered, "I saw a mom pick up her kid today. She looked like Mommy." I nodded, not saying a word. "I thought maybe it was her," he said, "but she didn't see me." I reached over and took his hand. "I miss her," he said, "even though I'm mad at her. Is that bad?" "No, sweetheart," I said. "That's just being human." He leaned his head against my shoulder, and we sat like that until the sky turned pink. That night, Lucy asked if we could do a family dance party in the living room. She turned on the radio, and we all jumped and spun and wiggled like the floor was lava. Mikey even smiled again, that kind of smile that sneaks out before you realize it's safe to feel it. After bedtime, I sat on the porch alone. I thought about Melissa. She wasn't evil, just broken. She'd let life crush her until she couldn't hear her own children calling for her. And while I had every right to be furious, I also understood something deeper. Some people don't know how to stay. Not because they don't love you, but because they were never shown how. That's what I'm trying to give these kids. Not just shelter or structure, but how to stay, how to show up, how to choose love even when it's hard, especially then. The letter came on a Thursday, an official envelope stamped with the court seal. Our hearing date was set. Temporary guardianship was no longer enough. They wanted permanence, stability, and so did I. But the weight of it settled on me like a stone. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, rereading the letter, the legalese dancing like fog across the page. That night, I told Mikey. He looked at me carefully, then asked, "Will we still live here?" "Yes," I said, "that won't change." "Even if she comes back?" I hesitated, then told the truth. "Even then." He nodded and walked away without another word. Later, I found him in his room with a colouring book open. He had drawn 3 stick figures holding hands, a tall one with glasses, a medium one with brown hair, and a small one with purple shoes. Underneath, in block letters, he wrote, "My forever home." I sat on the edge of his bed and tried not to cry. The morning of the court date, I dressed them both in clean clothes and packed snacks, just in case. We arrived early. I could feel their nervous energy vibrating from the back seat. Inside the courthouse, everything smelled like paper and old wood. The fluorescent lights flickered above us as we waited in silence. Mikey clutched my hand. Lucy clutched her stuffed dog. When they called our name, I rose slowly, like my bones had aged a decade overnight. We stood before the judge, a kind-eyed woman with silver hair and a steady voice. I told her the truth. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her how Melissa had vanished, how we hadn't heard from Trent, how the kids had adapted, how I'd adjusted, how love wasn't always enough, but consistency was, how I'd die before I'd let them feel abandoned again. She asked the kids a few gentle questions. Lucy said she liked grandma pancakes and when she brushes my hair like magic. Mikey said, "She always waits for me when I have bad dreams." The judge smiled. Then she looked at me. "Mrs. Whittaker," she said, "it is the decision of this court to grant you full legal custody of Mikey and Lucy Whittaker, effective immediately." I closed my eyes, not from grief, but from relief. They were mine now, not just in spirit, but in law, in ink, in promise. The folder sat on my kitchen table for 3 full days. Custody papers, signatures, stamps, final orders. A victory, yes, but it didn't feel like balloons and cake. It felt like the end of something I hadn't wanted to admit was over. Melissa was gone, truly gone. And while her name still lived in ink on the kids' birth certificates, she had become a ghost in every other way. Mikey peeked inside the folder once. Does this mean we're yours now? I nodded. It means what we already knew in our hearts is now true on paper, too. Lucy didn't ask. She just started calling me Mom Grandma from that day forward, like her little brain couldn't quite let go of either title, so she merged them into one. But that week, something else shifted, something you couldn't print on legal paper. Mikey started sleeping with the door to his room open. He'd always kept it closed, even at my house, ever since the night he was dropped off. Now it stayed cracked open, just enough for light to spill in, just enough for Trust to peek through. Lucy drew a picture of our house at school. The sun had sunglasses, the mailbox had a smile, and above the roof were 3 hearts. The teacher wrote FAMILY in the corner. I took the kids to the lake the next Saturday, just a short drive. We brought peanut butter sandwiches and fruit snacks, and we skipped stones until our arms ached. Mikey found a flat, smooth rock and handed it to me. "Keep this," he said, "so you don't forget today." "I won't," I promised. That night, after I tucked them in, I sat alone on the porch. The stars blinked like Morse code across the sky, and for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't scare me. I opened the custody folder again. At the bottom was a small note paper-clipped to the last form, a note from Ms. Delaney, the social worker. "I've seen a lot of cases, Mrs. Whitaker, but it's rare to see something built on such quiet strength. You didn't just take them in. You taught them that home isn't a place, it's a person." I placed the rock Mikey gave me on top of the note. The papers were signed. But it was that sentence that sealed it. Lucy's 6th birthday came faster than I expected. She counted down the days with paper rings on a string, ripping one off every morning before school like it was Christmas Eve every day. She asked for a cake with pink frosting, glitter sprinkles, and a unicorn horn. Mikey offered to be the entertainment, which meant wearing his cape and performing knock-knock jokes with dramatic flair. I ordered balloons, made a list of her favourite foods, and even invited a few neighbours with kids. But one night, as I tucked her in, she whispered something that froze me mid-step. "Do you think Mommy will come this time?" I sat down on the edge of her bed. "What do you mean, baby?" "She missed my last birthday, and the one before, but maybe, now that it's special, maybe she'll come back." I paused. I wanted to protect her hope without feeding it. "I think your mommy loves you," I said slowly, "but I don't know if she's ready to show up yet." Lucy stared at the ceiling. "Okay," just that, "okay." The morning of the party, she was quiet. She still wore her unicorn dress and helped me arrange cupcakes, but something was missing behind her eyes. Mikey noticed. He pulled me aside. "She thinks if Mom doesn't come, it means she doesn't care." "What do you think?" I asked him. He looked out the window. "I think she left, but we stayed." His words were simple, but weighty. The party started. Music, games, pink decorations, laughter in the backyard. Lucy smiled, spun in circles, opened presents. But I could tell. She kept glancing at the front gate, waiting. Around 4 o'clock, she gave up, sat down on the porch steps, cake in hand, quietly eating the slice she'd saved, just in case Mommy came late. I sat beside her. We didn't talk. We just watched the wind play with the ribbon on her dress. Finally, she leaned against me and whispered, "Next year I'll only save cake for people I know are coming." I kissed the top of her head. "That's okay, sweetheart. You've got lots of those people now." And in that quiet moment, we celebrated a new kind of birthday. One where she learned that love shows up, even if it doesn't look the way she first imagined. Every Sunday morning, we made pancakes. It started as a distraction, really, something to help the kids anchor themselves to a routine when everything else felt uncertain. But now it was our ritual. Mikey cracked the eggs, Lucy spilled the flour, and I pretended not to mind when the dog tracked syrup across the kitchen floor. This Sunday was no different until the doorbell rang. It was early, too early for a neighbor visit. My stomach turned as I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the front door. Melissa, standing there with a backpack, her hair tied up, hands shaking. She looked smaller than I remembered, older, like someone who had run too far on too little fuel. "Hi, Mum," she said. I didn't speak. I couldn't, not at first. "I'm not here to take them," she added quickly. I wanted to ask if I could talk to them, with you there, just for a little while." Everything inside me went still. "I'm sober now," she continued. "I've been clean for 6 months. I'm going to counselling. I'm working. I know it's not enough, but I thought maybe—" She trailed off. I looked at her. This woman, my daughter, the girl I once rocked to sleep, who had vanished without a word. The mother who had abandoned her children and now stood asking for scraps of their lives. "They're eating breakfast," I said slowly. "I'll ask them." Her eyes filled with tears. "Okay, thank you." I walked back inside, heart pounding, hands clenched. In the kitchen, I knelt beside them. "Your mum is outside. She wants to talk, but only if you want to. I'll stay with you." Mikey stared at his plate. Lucy blinked, wide-eyed. Finally, Mikey nodded. Lucy whispered, "Okay." Just for a little, they followed me to the porch. Melissa knelt down slowly, careful not to overwhelm them. "Hi," she said, her voice cracking. "I missed you." Mikey said nothing. Lucy asked, "Where did you go?" Melissa's lip trembled. "I got very lost, sweetheart, but I'm trying to find my way back." There was silence. Then Mikey handed her a half-eaten pancake from his plate. She took it, hands shaking, and for the first time in a long while, we all sat together. Not as a whole family, but as broken pieces, quietly trying to see if they still fit. The next few weeks were delicate. Melissa didn't ask for anything more than what was offered. She showed up when she said she would, always with a soft voice, always with eyes that never stopped searching the kids' faces for forgiveness. She never asked to be alone with them. She didn't try to erase the past. She didn't promise anything either. She just stayed. Once a week, we'd sit on the porch, me in my rocking chair, Melissa on the steps, the kids between us. Sometimes Lucy would lean against her, sometimes she wouldn't. Mikey spoke more with time, but his words came like cautious birds, skittish, ready to fly at any sign of danger. One evening, Melissa brought a stack of hand-drawn cards. "I made these in group therapy," she said, "one for each of you." Lucy opened hers first. A crayon drawing of 2 girls, one big, one small, holding hands under a rainbow. On the back, "You were always my sunshine." Mikey opened his next. It showed a rocket ship blasting through clouds. On the back, "I hope you're still reaching for the stars. I'm sorry I wasn't there to see you launch." Then she handed one to me. It was simple, a heart, broken, then stitched. On the back, "Thank you for raising them when I couldn't." I don't expect anything, but I'm here, even if it's just to sit quietly. I held the card without speaking. She wasn't asking for redemption. She wasn't performing. She was present. After she left that night, Mikey asked, "Will she always come back now?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but she's learning how." Lucy asked, "Is it okay if I like when she comes?" I pulled her close. "It's more than okay." And it was. It is. Because healing isn't about erasing what happened. It's about allowing new memories to stand beside the old ones. I bought another chair for the porch that weekend. Melissa sat in it quietly the next time she came, not saying much, just sipping tea while the kids played with sidewalk chalk. 3 chairs, no fireworks, just a woman trying, and a family still rebuilding. The day Melissa brought flowers, I knew something had shifted. They weren't store-bought, they weren't fancy, just wildflowers tied together with twine. She handed them to me on a Thursday, unannounced. "I picked them on my walk to the bus stop," she said. "Saw them and thought, maybe they'd look good on your table." I took them, not because I needed flowers, but because she needed to give them. That evening, I placed them in a mason jar and set them by the window. The sunlight caught the yellow petals just right, and for a moment, it felt like everything inside the house had been scrubbed clean of the shadows. Melissa stayed for dinner. Nothing special, just grilled cheese and soup. Mikey told her about a new book he was reading. Lucy asked if she could braid her hair like That Time Before You Left. Melissa didn't flinch, she simply nodded. "Of course," she said. They sat on the rug, and Melissa's fingers moved gently through her daughter's hair. No rush, no guilt, just presence. After dinner, I walked her to the door. "I wanted to ask," she said, voice hesitant, "if I could attend the parent-teacher meeting next week. I won't interfere, I'd just like to show up." I studied her face. "You can come," I said, "but you'll sit beside me, not instead of me." "I understand," she replied. "That's more than fair." And it was. Because forgiveness, I've learned, doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we wipe the slate clean and pretend we were never hurt. It means creating space, carefully, intentionally, for someone to be different than they were before. Melissa didn't get her children back in one day. She earned them back in inches. A colouring book page taped to the fridge, a seat at the school play, a whispered goodbye at the end of a visit that turned into a quiet, "See you soon." That night, after the kids fell asleep, I sat on the porch and opened the journal where I'd recorded every part of this story. I wrote, "Forgiveness isn't a single act. It's 1,000 quiet choices to believe in someone's ability to grow." And just like that, the weight I'd carried for so long began to shift, not gone, but lighter. It was Lucy who brought it up first, curled up in her beanbag chair, chewing on a corner of her blanket like she always did when deep in thought. "Grandma," she said, "can I call her Mommy again now?" I looked up from the laundry basket. "You can call her whatever feels right, sweetheart." She nodded. "It feels like she's trying." She is. Later that week, Mikey asked if Melissa could come to his school project night. "Only if she doesn't talk too much," he added with a smirk. I smiled. "I'll make sure she knows." The kids were beginning to take ownership, not just of their home, but of their story. Their hurt wasn't gone, but it was no longer the only thing in the room. They were finding language for their boundaries, their hopes, their healing. Melissa came to project night. She stood in the back at first, unsure if she belonged. But Mikey called her over. "This is my mom," he said. "And this is my grandma. They both helped me." The teacher smiled warmly. And just like that, she was in the picture. Not as a shadow, but as a shape they were willing to draw again. Afterward, Melissa helped Lucy wash glitter off her arms in the school restroom. "She said I sparkle like a starfish," Lucy whispered to me in the car. "Not a regular star, a fish one." "Well," I said, "she's not wrong." That weekend, the four of us went to the park. Melissa brought sandwiches, I brought juice boxes. The kids ran ahead while she and I sat on the bench, two mothers, not quite friends, but no longer enemies. "I'll never be able to repay you," she said. "You don't need to," I replied. She wiped a tear with the back of her hand. "I thought about leaving the state again a while back, starting over." "I'm glad you didn't." "I am too." We watched the kids laugh under the swings, shoes flying, sun beaming down like the world had finally decided to give us a break. "They still need you," I said. "But this time, don't make them chase you." "I won't," she whispered. And somehow I believed her. Because for the first time she wasn't just visiting, she was staying. I was dusting the hallway when I noticed something new. A photo frame on Mikey's dresser. I hadn't put it there. It was a picture from the park. Melissa on one side, me on the other, the kids between us, all four of us caught mid-laugh. I remembered the moment. Lucy had just shouted, "Pretend to sneeze," and we did. The camera caught us mid-silly. Mikey had found the photo in a folder I'd printed from my phone, and he'd chosen it, framed it, displayed it. Not a picture of a perfect family, but one learning how to be one. I touched the frame gently, my heart swelling and cracking all at once. Later that evening, Mikey showed Lucy how to write mom in cursive for her spelling practice. She got the M backward. He didn't correct her. He just smiled and said, "It still counts." That weekend, Melissa asked if she could bring a cake for Sunday dinner. "Chocolate?" Lucy beamed. "With sprinkles," Melissa promised. She arrived early. No dramatic entrance, just a knock on the door and a cake in her hands. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt, no makeup. And I noticed, for the first time in a long while, she looked well. After dinner, Mikey asked if we could all play a board game together. We sat at the kitchen table, elbows bumping, dice rolling. Melissa lost every round. Lucy kept asking why her pieces kept falling asleep. It was simple, ordinary, everything we had once thought impossible. After the kids went to bed, Melissa lingered in the doorway. "Thank you," she said again. "For what?" I asked. "For letting me be here, for not shutting the door forever." I nodded. It was never locked. She reached into her bag and handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" "I updated my will," she said quietly. "Just in case. It names you as guardian, no matter what." My throat tightened. "Even if I get better," she added, "they'll always have you." I didn't open the envelope that night. I just held it, sat on the porch, and stared at the stars. Some papers are heavy, but they're also proof. Proof that we'd made it to the other side of something, together. Spring came early that year. The trees bloomed before we expected, and the wind turned warm in a way that made everything feel lighter. Mikey built a birdhouse in the garage with scrap wood. Lucy filled it with glitter, even though we told her birds don't care for sparkle. We planted a garden, real tomatoes, herbs, and even sunflowers. The kids each had a section of dirt, their names written in plastic letters on popsicle sticks. One morning, Melissa arrived with a paintbrush and 2 cans of colour. "I was thinking," she said, "maybe the porch could use a little touch-up." I nodded. We painted it together, Lucy in a tutu, Mikey with smudges on his face, me on a step stool, and Melissa sitting beside me, barefoot and laughing. It was our home now, not the house I raised my daughter in, not the house I thought would grow quiet and old with me. It had become a forever house, not because of bricks or siding, but because of the people inside it. Lucy came home from school one day with a drawing of all four of us, me, Melissa, Mikey, and her. Above our heads were words written in bold, lopsided letters. Home is who stays. We hung it on the fridge. Later that evening, Mikey stood beside me as I stirred soup. "Do you think things are okay now?" he asked. "I think they're better than okay," I said. "I think they're real." He smiled and walked away. That night I sat on the porch with Melissa. We didn't say much, we didn't need to. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's a plate of warm food, a porch painted in mismatched colours, or a handwritten note taped to the fridge. Sometimes it's simply being there. So when people ask me what happened, why I took in 2 children with nothing but a duffel bag and heartbreak, I tell them this. Because they were mine before I even realized it. Because when someone drops a piece of family at your feet, broken and fragile, you don't turn away. You kneel down, you pick them up, you build the rest together. One morning, one promise, one forever at a time.